Hi, I'm Agnes.
And I'm Natalie,
We're friends,
and coworkers.
and this is our podcast, Dinner Last Night. Nat and I share a passion for food and events.
And over 35 years of combined experience in the hospitality industry.
So pour yourself a glass of wine
Or whiskey,
and join us while we share our adventures in home cooking, entertaining,
and of course, what we made for dinner last night. Hi, and welcome everybody to our first episode of Dinner Last Night. I'm here with Agnes, my
Hi,
co-host.
how are you?
Agnes, what's cooking? What did you make for dinner last night?
Hello, everyone. This is Agnes. I actually made some sourdough bread over the weekend, and I had some leftover bread that I did not know what to do with. The recipe that I use tend to make for 2 large loaves, and it's only the three of us at home. I live with my husband and our almost 9-year-old son, so I had a lot of extra bread. So I decided to make French toast for dinner because in France, I am French. I'm from France, and we use leftover bread to make French toast. We never, buy fresh bread to make French toast. And I've been trying, recently to make breakfast for dinner at least once a week for a couple of reasons. One is because, my 9-year-old loves it. And also because it's really cheap and it helps balance out the rest of the week if you plan on having a nicer piece of fish or maybe meat the rest of the week. So yeah, that's what I made. That's what I made last night. And I actually, so I used the sourdough bread, which was awesome because it gave a little bit of tangy. The recipe that I used had some nutmeg and also, cinnamon. And the rest is a pretty basic, French toast. And of course, my husband and my child use syrup on it, but I use Nutella because that's kind of how I roll. So that was great dinner. How about you?
Last night, what did I make last night? Oh, I tried a new recipe actually. I made like a kimchi ramen. I was trying out these different ramen recipes for a project I'm working on at work. And so I tried this one kimchi ramen recipe where you basically you don't use any of the you use instant ramen, but you don't use any of the like packets that come with it, and you make the broth from kimchi. There's very few ingredients really, and then you kind of put in whatever you want, and it was really delicious. And I actually messed up the first time around, so I had to make a second helping. That wasn't what I was planning to make for dinner. So so that ended up being dinner, but it was really, really good. Very
So that
spicy though.
so now, I don't have like kimchi available at my house at all time. Like, do you buy it like already prepared, and like how do you use it?
So actually, this kimchi I have had in my fridge for a couple of weeks because my mom has recently been starting to make kimchi constantly. I actually don't know how to make it, and don't. People will hate me for this because kimchi. Everybody's all about kimchi right now, but I'm actually not the biggest fan of it. I mean, I like it in moderation. So yeah, so I happen to have a whole jar. I still have half the jar after making this. But yeah, so but you can buy kimchi, and lots of people make it at home. I mean, it's pretty like basic pickling, really, just with different spices than sort of a traditional kind of Western pickling, I guess.
Is it pickled or is it fermented? Is it cabbage?
Well, so it's like both. Yeah, it's cabbage,
Okay.
and it is. I mean, pickling is a kind of fermentation, I guess. So I suppose you could say it's both.
Right. So your broth was made with kimchi and then you use the
Hmm.
instant ramen.
Hmm.
Oh, sounds good.
Yeah,
Did you put
yeah.
any other kind of protein in it?
Um, Actually, well, yeah. So I added an egg at the very end. I cracked an egg on the top and covered it, let it sit for a couple minutes, and then
Mhm.
you mix the egg up into the broth. It makes it real nice and thick. And um, I recently learned this other hack that you can do with ramen, specifically like spicy Korean style noodles, where you take a slice of like Kraft single or like that some kind of like plastic cheese like that, and you
Mhm.
put it in the
Plastic cheese.
that's what I call it. I'm not hating, I love that cheese too, but, you put it on the bottom of the bowl before you pour, like, the ramen and soup in, and then you pour all that in, and you let it sit for a couple minutes, and then you, like, mix it up, and that cheese melts so easily into it, but
Right,
it makes it so creamy. And, like, I learned that trick recently, and now I do it with all, like it's just so good with, like, the spiciness because it adds, like, a little bit of creaminess and, like, cools it down a bit. Yeah, I don't know why it works, but it does. I mean, cheese is an unusual thing to put into, like, a noodle soup, but
right.
yeah, now I swear by it.
So
So
who do you cook for?
Uh, so I cook for I live with my boyfriend in South Philly, and so that's who I cook for is me and him. Um, and I have 2 cats, but I don't cook for them. I guess we should um, but that you raise a good point, Agnes. Maybe we should introduce ourselves to our listeners. So why don't you
Sure.
tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, and yes, as I said before, I am a mom of a 9-year-old little boy, and I was born and raised in Provence in the south of France. My parents are from the French Alps, so Provence is located in between the Mediterranean Sea and the French Alps. And I moved to the United States 16 years ago, and I live in Chester County, Pennsylvania, with my husband and our son and our 10-year-old chocolate lab. And so this is who I cook for, and they are, I'm very fortunate. They're both very, very great eater. I think Owen described himself as an adventurous eater. That's how he describes himself. He loves octopus and duck and a lot of really unusual things for a child. So that's also very awesome. But during the week, I guess we're recording this during the week, and during the week we try to make things kind of easy for us. We make breakfast for dinner. We have taco night. We try to reuse meat, cook meat once, and reuse it a couple of times. And yeah, and on the weekend, I always try to make something a little bit unusual, try a new recipe, and it's a real hobby. It is a real hobby to home cook and prepare food for everyone. So yeah, how about you?
So I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and I've been in the States now. I came to the States to go to college, and I've been here, I guess, going on 13 years now. But I spent my whole childhood in Hong Kong, and I think it's really hard to grow up in Hong Kong and not be exposed to a lot of different foods. Everything is so international there. It has like this really high restaurant density. So like the ratio of restaurants to the population is really high. It's a lot like New York in that way. And yeah, and growing up, my mom is a chef. So growing up, food was always this very, very central part of all of our lives. And my mom is also Filipino, which makes me half Filipino, and Filipinos have a very strong food culture too. So I think working in hospitality is just one of those things that was bound to happen for me sometimes. It's just like a culmination of everything that I was taught to care about as a kid. So yeah, but right now, like I said, I live in South Philadelphia with my boyfriend and my 2 cats. And my parents are actually no longer in Hong Kong. They live just outside of Philadelphia, so we see them a lot and still have plenty of home cooked meals with them as well. So yeah, what was it like growing up in Provence?
So my family is still in France. I was one of three. I have a big brother and a younger brother, who all everybody still live in the south of France. And growing up, my mom stayed home and my father was an international truck driver, so we didn't see him that often. He maybe came home every weekend or every other weekend. So my mom, did all the meals and really took care of us during the week. And on weekends, my parents tried to prepare meals together. I have a lot of wonderful memories of them making fresh pasta together. My dad will make homemade pizza. We always had a big garden. I think that that's really the one thing that I miss the most about living in France is the access to all fresh produce and how much different it tastes when you're over there. So yeah, I really we always had fresh. We always had good fresh produce. Produce. The weather over there is really dry and really like hot. So we were surrounded by lavender field. We had orchards everywhere, vine trees. Just a really great access to everything fresh. So if when you bite into a tomato here versus over there, it just tastes so different. It just doesn't taste the same. Produce here of vegetables, fruit and vegetables just don't taste as good. So I guess access to as a child access to a lot of fresh food. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that it was a little bit the same in Hong Kong. So, the place in Hong Kong that I grew up, Hong Kong is, there's like a main island, and then there's all these little outlying islands, and
Hmm.
I always liken them, to, like, the commuter boroughs of New York. You have a lot of people that live out on these islands that kind of commute into the city, for work, but the specific island that I grew up on, was actually originally a fishing village and is, and still, like, full of fishermen, and so, our access to that kind of seafood that literally you can watch them take it off the boats and then it goes to the restaurant and you're picking the fish that you want to eat out of the tank, is definitely something you don't find here in Philadelphia.
That must have been amazing.
Yeah, 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 and so, we didn't have, my mom actually is a really avid gardener, but we didn't have a garden, growing up. She has a really, plentiful one now, though, and she grows all kinds of crazy things. I'm always impressed. I have a total black thumb. I can't keep even, like, a cactus alive, so I did not inherit that from her. But yeah, she really has a very bountiful garden, which is kind of why I get to enjoy the fruits of her, labor there. That's the kimchi I was talking about earlier. It was made with cabbage, but also with a lot of other, like, greens and stuff that she had been growing in her garden, including purslane, which is something I'm not that familiar with, but, she's been growing a lot of, I guess.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know anything about purslane.
No, never even heard of it
I
before. So I don't know about you, but growing up, we always had to be home for dinner. So we grew up in a little village, and maybe 3,000 people lived in that village. So my parents would let us, if we didn't have school or even after school, we could just go take our bikes, be out. And but we always had to be home for dinner. It was such an important part of the day to for everybody to just share the meal together and connect during the day. And
Mhm.
I think that's why now and this is why we have this podcast, Dinner Last Night, because dinner is so important.
It's
So
true. No, my family, was the same. It's funny you were talking about, the different things that your parents cooked, and, the difference in my family is that my dad cooks nothing. Don't think I think I don't unless it's in the toaster. Other than that, I don't think I've ever seen him cook anything my whole life, not even on a grill, never put a pan on the stove. But but he's also my mom's biggest fan, and he has such a sort of deep appreciation for her talent with food and all the work that goes into it, that he was really sort of the enforcer of that rule that, no matter what you're doing before or after, you need to be home for dinner, and I think he really instilled that in us, that eating together is important, and you're right, that's really when you connect with people, and I think that's sort of where my kind of deep love and appreciation of food and of cooking at home comes from, is definitely came from family.
So other than dinner, weeknight dinner, is there, growing up, was there a particular meal that was more important than others? Maybe, out here Sunday dinner is kind of the family dinner in the US. Was there like a day that was maybe more important than others?
I think for us, not so much. I think actually if I remember correctly, on the weekends is when we were most likely to kind of go out to eat. Um,
Mhm.
and not even necessarily go out anywhere fancy. The advantage to living in a place that has so many restaurants and types of restaurants is that, eating out could also consist of just going and eating at a noodle shop, right? Like
Right.
out on the street. Um, so I think for us, I don't know that there was a specific day, really, or meal that was the most important, but dinner was sort of the critical meal because we weren't always together for the rest of them. Um, I mean, my sister and I would eat breakfast together. We got up very, very early to go to school because, of course, we lived on this island that was kind of a hike from where we went to school. So we would get up really early. But, my mom always made us breakfast, even through high school. She always uh, had breakfast ready for us in the morning, even if it was just a bowl of cereal. She made it herself. It was always waiting for us on the table in the morning. But yeah, but otherwise, our meals throughout the day might have been, with any number of different people. But yeah, how about you? Was there a sort of specific day or meal during the week that was kind of
It feels like, Saturday was the day where, as I said, my dad maybe would make pizza at night, or maybe bolognese, or maybe fresh hand cut fries, or something a little more casual. And Sunday lunch was definitely a little more formal because, my mom would spend pretty much all morning in the kitchen. She would normally bake something. She made very simple things, but she would definitely bake maybe a chocolate cake, a walnut cake, something along those lines. And then we would make something like a little more elaborate, maybe a
Mhm,
stew, something that needs a little more time. So we ate. I know my grandfather had rabbits, so we ate rabbits for
mhm,
like lunch, as a stew. That was a pretty big one. But just, yeah, stew, just something a little more elaborate, and that was definitely the meal that took the longest. I know, we're famous for staying at the dinner table a while, and that was definitely one of them.
mhm.
Um, and it's definitely yeah, the nicest meal. And usually Sunday night we never really ate that much.
Right.
You know, it was usually whatever was left, maybe a piece of cheese,
Mhm.
and that was that for Sunday dinner.
Yeah, that's funny. Actually, the first time I ever had rabbit was in France,
How was
and
it prepared?
it was delicious. It was some kind of like a cassoulet or something like that,
Mhm.
if I remember correctly. Yeah, we were on our whole family was, like, on vacation in Europe, and we were in Paris, I think, visiting an old family friend of my parents, and she made it, actually, it was a home cooked,
Right?
meal. I just remember it was in some kind of, like,
A big Dutch oven, right,
casserole.
or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm,
So we eat it with sometimes we do like a Dijon musk cream sauce,
mhm.
or you can eat it like with mushroom and a brown, more stewy sauce. But it's very easy to find at at the grocery store. It's as popular as finding, pork or beef or anything else. But I think we ate it more often because my grandfather was breeding rabbits. So
Right,
we had it, we just definitely had it more often than before.
yeah. I've forgotten what I was gonna say. Oh, you know what? We didn't tell our listeners how we know each other.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Well, I can definitely tell the story.
yeah,
So, Nellie and I met, I want to say almost 10 years ago, or close to 10 years, maybe 9 years ago.
yeah,
We met 9 years ago, and I was working in a small college campus as the director of catering, and I was looking for on call staff. And Nellie applied and interviewed. I hired her, and we worked together for a couple of years, and then I went on my way, and she moved on as well. And then now we're working together again. And all these years, we never lost touch.
yeah.
Maybe you can explain that better than me.
Yeah, so Agnes is the reason that I work, in this industry, you know? She often credits herself for jump-starting my career, right? Which is true. I just don't know sometimes whether to thank her or, despise her for it, but but yeah, no, we've been working on and off together a long time.
I
Um
saw the potential. I saw the potential.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about what you were saying about Owen and what an adventurous eater he is, and it just reminded me of what a picky eater I was as a child. Like, I think that if you asked people that knew me as a child whether if they thought I would ever end up working in food, I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that would say yes, because I was truly the pickiest eater.
Very
And
more than your sister.
oh, yeah, no, my younger sister was not picky at all. She would eat anything. She was like Owen. She was like, "Octopus? Yeah. Squid tentacles? Yeah." The weirder it looked, it was like a game. Like, sometimes I kind of felt like she was almost just doing it to make me look bad because she knew I was a picky eater. So she was like, "Absolutely, I'm gonna eat it and show her." Um, but yeah, she was the most adventurous eater, and I remember in, like, maybe 5th grade 5th or 6th grade having to do, like, a big project on, like, food, and one of the first things was to list all the foods you like and all the foods you hate, and my mom still has a copy of that project somewhere, and I read it recently, and everything on the list of foods that I hate, first of all, it's so arbitrary. It's like eggs, I hate eggs, uh eggplant. All of the things on that list are now the things that I love the most. I hated eggplants, tomatoes, salmon. Who hates salmon? It's
I feel that all kids go through those cycles. When Owen was little, he would eat hummus for maybe 3 months in a row, and then all of a sudden, he hated hummus. We couldn't serve it to him anymore. The same with avocados, the same with tomatoes. But we kept putting food in front of him, and now he does. I mean, he really does a good job. There really isn't a lot of food that he won't try. I mean, does he finish his vegetables every day? No, but he tries.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, he's definitely one of the most adventurous kids eaters I've ever met. I mean,
I
him and
don't
I share a deep love of octopus.
I don't eat octopus. No, thank you.
Okay, so it's time for our last bite. Agnes, do you have any final thoughts?
Yes, I do actually. So earlier I was talking to you about my dinner last night, and I mentioned that I made French toast for dinner. And actually, the French translation for French toast is lost bread in French. We say pain perdu, which means lost bread. So in France, you will buy your bread fresh every day, and if you don't get to finish your baguette or anything else, after one day or two, it becomes really stale. So this was always a way to repurpose bread because in France, it's really not good fashion to throw away bread. It's almost, n- I've never seen my parents throwing away bread ever in my life. So that's a way to repurpose bread, and my mom often made it for dinner as well, and then not really for breakfast, but really for dinner. And it was a way to not throw away bread. So lost bread is the translation for French toast. So thought I would mention it. What about you?
Pain perdu.
Pain
It's so
perdu.
much it's so much more elegant than French toast.
Yes, but for once, French toast are actually French. I don't believe there's a lot of other things that are being called French that are
This
French.
is
So,
true. This is true.
do you have a
Um,
last bite for today?
I do. So earlier, we were talking about my mom's garden and the purslane that she's growing in there, and neither of us knew what purslane was. So I looked up what it is. Purslane is a weed that's also a succulent that contains 93% water. But it's a green leafy vegetable that can be eaten raw or cooked. It's also called pigweed, little hogweed, fatweed, and pusley, which that's gross. Um, it has a slightly sour or salty taste similar to spinach and watercress and can be used in many of the same ways as spinach and lettuce, such as in salads or sandwiches. So that makes sense. It makes sense that it really worked in the kimchi. It kind of blended right in there.
Right. That's
But yeah,
incredible.
so that's our last bite.
That was awesome. And I know we wanted to say a special thank you for this evening for our
Yes.
first episode.
Yep. We want to thank Sean Lewis of Sean Lewis Illustration, who very kindly designed our logo for us. The beautiful logo that we have was designed by Sean. You can follow Sean on Instagram at Sean Lewis Illustration. Um, but yeah, thank you, Sean. All right, that's our show. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions, comments, or even just stories to share, you can message us on our Instagram at Dinner Last Night Podcast, all one word. That's Dinner Last Night Podcast. We can't wait to hear what you made for dinner last night.
Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
Bye.